Well, after heavy exposition, it is clear that the war between the old and the new gods is slowly about to begin. Hey guys, remember for American Gods, Season 1, Episode 6, A Murder of Gods, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode, especially since now we really do know what's going on. It was very interesting seeing how the rest of the season was going to play out, especially after the very exposition-heavy episode last week. I was really hoping this episode would be better, and I have to say, that was absolutely the case. This was a fantastic episode. I really did love what we got here. It was still a little bit slow, but it was a lot better paced, I think, than last week. We had some really great stuff going on for both Shadow and Laura. We're really starting to see, I think, where we're headed for the rest of the season, but let's just get into this episode because there definitely is quite a lot to talk about as usual, and just like every episode, we once again have another Coming to America-esque like scene, and this time it focuses on Mexico. We see there are these Mexicans, and they're arriving at the Rio Grande, and they stare at the river blocking their path, and they pray to Jesus. And then one woman tells them to stand up, and the woman says that the current is fast, but if they can't swim, they simply won't go. That's how it's going to go. If they can't swim, they're not going to make it. So they enter the river, they start crossing, staying closer together, and a tattooed man then goes last. And we don't know who this could possibly be, but he follows his wife and daughter, and the leader then reaches the other side and arrives in America, and one of them thanks God for the chance. The tattooed man is actually at the center of the river, and he starts to drown, unable to swim, and as he goes under, Jesus appears, pulls him to the surface, and the tattooed man then swims to America. Everyone watches as Jesus walks across the water, and that scene was incredible. Just seeing this Mexican Jesus watch across the water, they basically worship, and he says that they know who he is, and he just vanishes. So, sure, they know who Jesus is, but he's just kind of gone, and the men drive up and open fire. They kill the Mexicans, and Jesus steps in their way, is gunned down, wounds in his chest and hands, and I kind of saw it as like a modern retelling of like the crucifixion. Like, that's kind of what it was trying to show there, but that was a really cool opening. You know, like I said before, these openings are becoming some of my favorite parts of the show. This was not my favorite, but they're just so visually stunning, and they're such a departure from, you know, what we actually get into, and I think it was definitely very well done, and it very well ties into the theme of the episode, which a lot of this episode is very much about gun control, but not in the way you think it is, which was really cool. We see Shadow and Wednesday, they're walking along the highway, and Shadow demands to know who the new gods were and what happened, because now he knows that there are new gods. He wants to know specifically who they were, and Wednesday asks him what he believes he saw, and Shadow says that he doesn't know what he saw. His boss says that the dead policemen were warning him and has sacrificed themselves, and it was all on the periphery until Shadow met him. So basically, this has kind of all been coming to get Shadow. Like, I kind of saw it like this has all been, you know, premeditated, like he's been looking for Shadow for a while, and Wednesday admits that they're not safe now, and Wednesday wonders who Wednesday really is, because he doesn't really trust him, you can tell, and Wednesday says that if he told him that, Shadow would simply not believe him. Now, we know who Shadow is, you know, I mean, Wednesday is Odin, but I don't think Shadow's gonna learn that until the end of the season, and we don't really know how that's gonna go, but when Shadow says that he saw his wife earlier that night, waiting for him in his room, Wednesday stops and turns, because now you have this thing that, I mean, is something that Shadow obviously wouldn't believe, but he knows is very much real. So you are starting to see that whole thing of Shadow kind of being like, oh, I don't believe anything that I see. That's starting to mess with him a bit, because he's starting to have to do that. A lot of things that he thinks couldn't possibly be true are starting to become true, and that's a very good evolution for his character. I really have loved where Shadow has been going throughout this season, and this episode especially really is starting to mess with his mentality there, which I thought, again, was really well done. But back in the motel, Shadow and Wednesday are looking at the devastation. Wednesday suggests that they depart as well, and they go to the car, and Shadow says that he touched Laura and she kissed him, and Wednesday asks if Shadow's scared, tells him that in his experience, the dead come back for a purpose, and he figures that Laura's purpose was simply to let Shadow go, and I very much do believe that. Like I said, I think Laura's purpose is to not be with Shadow, and tells him to get in the car, and when Shadow hesitates, Wednesday says that Shadow has seen the people after them and what they can do, and he's leaving, and Shadow then goes in. Wednesday drives off. He sees Laura running after them, speeds up and turns on the radio so that Shadow doesn't hear Laura calling his name, And as we see in this episode, they basically do go on their own separate paths. So we do see Laura, she goes to the night clerk and asks where her car is, and he tells her that the police thought it belonged to the dead woman and impounded it, and Laura explains that she is the dead woman and asks where the police is, and Mad Sweeney comes in and says that the police are dead and admits that he has a car. Laura tells him that they're going and tells her to pick one. I have to say, I love the interaction between Sweeney and Laura. Just the fact that Laura has all this power over him, but he's also throwing in all these great wisecracks. I'm really loving the interplay between them. Just a lot of fun. Sweeney has her break the handcuffs on him first and says he's going with her until he has his coin back, and he steals a taxi cab and insists on driving, says he knows someone who can resurrect Laura. Because remember, she's still undead. I mean, she's not alive. She basically is the equivalent of Frankenstein right now, and he knows someone who can fully resurrect her, which is obviously what Laura wants, or she's going to be liquefied. So Sweeney warns Laura that whatever she is, it doesn't last long in a hot summer, and she will eventually liquefy. So Laura wonders what Sweeney is, and he tells her that he's a leprechaun. And we then get a character that I've been waiting to see for a while. We finally see Salim again, which was really cool. I was very happy that we saw Salim. Remember, we saw him back in episode 3, you know, Salim, who was in that whole gay relationship with that one god who left him. We finally pick up with his story in this episode, and it makes a lot of sense why we're following him in the first place, because Salim and Laura are in very similar situations. We see Salim, he aims a gun at them and tells them to stop stealing his cab, and Salim then asks Sweeney if he's ever met a Djinn, and explains that he's been traveling through Mecca looking for a Djinn, but after a moment, Salim lowers the gun and tells Salim to take them to Kentucky, and then he'll tell them where to find a whole murder of God. So as he drives, Wednesday tells Shadow that the dead are tenacious bastards, and he offers a charm that can lift grieving from a heart. Shadow points out that he's bleeding, and Wednesday then pulls over as he studies the wound. Shadow feels something moving inside the wound. He doesn't know what it is, but Wednesday leads him out in front of a headlight. He touches the wound and tells him not to look, and he talks about the trees and how man worshiped them, and he pulls the root out of Shadow's wound, and they then get into the car and they drive on. So we don't exactly know what that's all about, you know, if Wednesday can really heal him or whatever, but Salim then drives. He talks about everything in New York that is sacred to him, and Laura then tunes him out and watches Shadow's light in the distance, and I love how much she doesn't care, like, she's just kind of ignoring him. Sweeney finally tells Salim to shut up, because they don't really care about what he has to say, and I kind of feel bad for Salim. He's kind of like the outsider here, and Laura closes the dividing window. She then asks Salim if he killed the cab's owner, Ibrahim, and Salim says that he never met Ibrahim, but Salim figures that Ibrahim was given a new life just like Salim was, and he and Laura figure that they should both fuck the assholes in their lives, and Laura realizes that she'll never really see her mother again, which is really sad. I mean, we know obviously that Laura really cared about her mother, and just that realization that she's never going to see her again, that's something that she's just kind of realizing now, and she mentions that she's looking forward to being resurrected. Sweeney tells her it's not for public consumption, like being resurrected is not something she should just tell anyone, and Laura grabs his nose and tells him to shut up before lighting up a cigarette. And again, I love how badass she really is. I love the interplay between these two. I have a feeling it's gonna be one of my favorite parts of this series. Now that we have it, I think it's definitely one of my favorite parts of the series. Just so much fun to watch. And Salim finally asks Laura if she's dead and if she prayed for another life, and Laura says she was forced to pray in Sunday school, and her father told her to pray for her family, and she prayed for her family to disappear. And Salim says that he prays to thank God for bringing him where he is, and he prays that he finds the Jinn, because the Jinn is actually his afterlife. We find out that's where he's supposed to be. That's kind of his I can't think of the name right now, but you know, the guy that was supposed to bring Laura and take out her heart, that's kind of his afterlife. And Salim says that he wants to know more, and a chuckling Sweeney asks if he had sex with the Djinn, and obviously we know that's the truth. We know that Salim did in fact have sex with him, and the Djinn walked out, and you can tell that Salim and Laura are both on separate paths, where they're both kind of in this period of being undead, and they don't really know how to go on with their lives, and they kind of just are. And I really did love the bonding between these two in the episode. You know, these are two characters who are seemingly unalike, but now that we have Laura back in the story, it makes sense why we introduced him in the first place, and I can't wait to see really where this is going to go. So at the Vulcan factory in Kentucky, Richard Miller goes to his office. He leans against a railing, it breaks, and he falls into a vault of molten steel, and it dissolves, and his blood then mixes with the steel. The steel is forged into bullets that are loaded into boxes, and Wednesday and Shaw arrive in the town of Kentucky. Wednesday explains that all the citizens are dedicated to their America. Everyone that they pass have guns, and Wednesday says that everyone will defend what they believe in. So this episode looks at the whole gun control thing in a slightly different angle. This is more about protection, how people need these guns to protect them. And I thought it was actually really good. You know, I see so many anti-gun shows that I liked that this show looked at from a slightly different angle. It was more about why we actually do need guns. So they come to a parade. Wednesday says that if he knows his friend, it's a celebration. Someone gets tossed into a volcano. He explains that there was a faulty railing at the forge, and twice a year it happens. And as the town mayor addresses the crowd, Wednesday tells Shadow that the mayor is actually Vulcan, and the townspeople will fire their guns to the air to salute Richard, and Wednesday assures Shadow that Vulcan will join them. The crowd then disperses, and Wednesday advises Shadow to get back into the car. The bullets then rain down. Wednesday and Vulcan then hug in greeting, and Wednesday then tells Vulcan he needs him to believe in him and gives him a bottle of wine, and he introduces Shadow when he comes over. Now, obviously, he wants to recruit Vulcan, and we see how that turns out, but Vulcan says that he's heard that Wednesday is starting a war, and Wednesday says that they're all warring and losing, and the new gods are taking honey from their mouths, and again, you can see that he really is, you know, trying to do whatever he can to persuade Vulcan to join, because Vulcan is one of his oldest friends. You get the sense these two have known each other for a long time, and that was something that was really well done here. I really did feel the camaraderie between them, but smiling, Vulcan says he's not starving for honey, and they should have, and Wednesday should get something to eat. So he's really not, you know, interested in the war, you can see. So Salim stops at a bar in Indiana. The three of them go inside. They order drinks. They find this dark booth, and Sweeney warns Laura that she doesn't want to draw any unnecessary attention to him. So the leprechaun tells her that her life is done, and he's going to make sure it stays that way. And she says that she only felt her heart beat when she kissed Shadow. So she kind of feels like she's alive when she kisses him, which I think does show that she is still in love with him. And there definitely is more of a purpose with Shadow, as much as Wednesday's telling him otherwise. And Sweeney figures that the kiss ended Shadow's doubts that she's dead, and tells Laura to take the hint. And he tells her that Shadow is Wednesday's man now, and tells Laura to get a new life like Salim did. And Salim admits that that's exactly what he did. He found a way to move on from the Djinn, and Laura insists that Shadow made her heart beat again. Sweeney tells her that coming back from the dead is like anal sex, but it's worse, and Laura says that she actually likes anal sex, and again, I love their interaction there, and I mean, Sweeney does have a point there, that Laura is not really understanding that she's dead, and she kind of she's given this chance to start anew. Like, the life that she had is kind of over, and she gets to have a whole new life and start again. You know, that's kind of what Laura always wanted. She wanted that chance to really feel alive, and now she does kind of have that chance here. So, night falls in Vulcan. Shadow looks at what Vulcan is, says an old lynching tree, and Shadow tells Wednesday that they should go, but Vulcan and Wednesday insist that they are in fact safe here. But, you know, Shadow doesn't feel that way because there's guns everywhere. However, Wednesday warns that someone is always watching. They go into Vulcan's house, and he says that he became the god of the town through sacrifice, and Vulcan suggests that Wednesday could sacrifice himself like he has before, and Wednesday says that world is closed to him, and Vulcan then asks Shadow if he's ever seen a man hanged, and he says it's a terrible fate to find one's faith. He explains that he's franchised his faith, and those who actually worship him hold the volcano in the palm of their hand. And Vulcan then takes out his gun. He says it's filled with prayers in his name. He shoots a stuffed moose head, which was incredibly badass. And Wednesday asks Vulcan to come with him to Wisconsin, stay with him so the world will open up to them again. And Vulcan agrees, and he asks when they leave, so he's open to it. He's okay with joining, like he's ready to go. And Wednesday says when he forges a blade that Wednesday can wear on his hip, he needs it for when they stand together. And Vulcan tells him that he'll make a blade worthy of the god, and it seems that this has gone completely well. Like, he has recruited Vulcan, and it seems like this is someone who he can easily recruit. So once Vulcan walks out, Shadow asks Wednesday if he can really trust him. Wednesday says that he knows who Vulcan is and who he's always been, and he can trust that. And Shadow figures that Vulcan knew he was, in fact, lynched. And Wednesday says it was a personal fuck you to him. He plans to use the blade to actually retort, and he tells Shadow that he's very distracted, and Shadow admits that it's actually lore. And I will admit that. I mean, Shadow's not really looking at the bigger picture here. He's too focused on all of these secondary things that just aren't as big as a deal as the principal. I mean, the principal thing here is that there is a war and they need to fight, and Shadow's kind of in the middle of it all, and Wednesday tells him to close his eyes. Shadow does so, and Wednesday asks if he can see where Laura is, and concentrating, Shadow can see that Laura is outside her parents' home in Indiana and doesn't really feel the cold. So Wednesday asks if Shadow can feel Laura fade away, and we then see Laura. She walks back to taxi cab, tells Salim to drive, and when he wonders if she wants to fuck those assholes, she agrees, and they drive off. And I thought that was a really good scene. Again, it's showing they're ready to move on with their lives, realizing that that's not really their purpose in life, and just fuck them. I mean, that's who they had, and now they're willing to move on, and I really did love the way that played out. But Vulcan then forges the blade. He inscribes it with runes as Wednesday and Shadow look on. And when Vulcan wonders why Wednesday's fighting the new gods, Wednesday says that Vulcan has what's right for him, and he wants the others to get the same. And he asks if Vulcan told the new gods that they're there. Vulcan admits that he did and that they're coming. And as Shadow looks around, Vulcan says he's been advised to stay neutral. He insists that the new gods are the tide, and they gave him a gun and put power back in his hand. And every bullet fired is simply a prayer in his name. So he's really doing this for himself. And Vulcan tells Wednesday that his role in all of this is a martyr, and Wednesday says that Vulcan is the martyr. He takes the blade, cuts off Vulcan's head, shoves him into the molten steel, and that was extremely graphic, but I mean, it makes sense why. I mean, this was someone who Wednesday really did trust, and he really did feel like this was someone that he could easily recruit. When he realizes that he's actually been working for the new gods the whole time, and that's why he's in such a good position, and I thought it was very shocking the way that did play out. I was not expecting things to go that way at all, but that was an incredibly well done reveal, and I really did love the way that all played out. Again, very shocking stuff, but I think it made a lot of sense, really. So shocked, Shadow then stares at what happened. He wonders what Wednesday has done. Wednesday then hands Shadow the sword and pisses in the vat, saying that he's laying down a curse on the whole thing. The steel is then forged into bullets that are low into boxes, and so we see Salim then, so obviously we don't know what's going to happen there, and he's now placed this curse. We don't know how that's all going to start, but Salim then stops to pray toward Mecca as Laura and Sweeney then watch. He tells Laura that God is great, and she tells him that life is great. He agrees as a bored Sweeney goes back to the taxi cab, and that is the way the episode ends. Really great stuff overall, but let's just get into this episode and where this is going to lead us for the final 2 episodes of the season. So, overall, guys, this was another really great episode. I was very impressed with the way this episode really turned out. Let's first talk about Shadow, because holy shit, I mean, if Shadow wasn't a part of this already, he definitely is a huge part of this now, because now he really doesn't have a choice. He needs to stay exactly where he is. He, I think, is going to be the one that is the most loyal to Wednesday, even though he doesn't really know if he can trust this guy. At the same time, he just kind of has to stick to the story, because, again, he doesn't really know what his life is besides being with Wednesday. It's certainly not with Laura. Laura and him are kind of done after what she's done. He just can't really trust her anymore, so he doesn't really see much of a purpose but to stick by Wednesday. And because everyone kind of seems to be betraying him, he might be the one, I think, to stop this war. But again, we don't really know what's going on with Shadow, where his loyalties really lie. I think it's going to be very interesting to see where this is all going to go, and what Shadow really decided to do. Is he going to go with the old gods or the new gods? I mean, if I was Shadow, I'd just kind of listen to Wednesday, but at the same time, Wednesday's not the most trusting. It seems like Wednesday is someone who betrays a lot of these people, and he's not even telling Shadow who he really is, so I'm definitely interested in seeing where this is really going to go. And now that Wednesday did place this curse, who knows really where this is going to go? Who knows what's really going to happen from there? Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we're really going to find out what happens with Shadow and Wednesday until 2 weeks now, because I believe next week is an all Sweeney flashback episode, which is cool. I'm very interested in getting into his backstory, but I do wish that they would focus a little bit more on the story. I'm really getting into it, and I really thought Vulcan could be someone they could trust. I mean, Vulcan really seemed like someone who was legit and someone who Wednesday could really trust, and I didn't really believe that he would, he would in fact pledge his trust to the new gods, but it kind of does make sense. I mean, again, the new gods are very much there because they're very, they're there to help these people, and they really want to supply them with, all these sort of what Wednesday feels unnecessary things like TV and media and technology and all this kind of stuff that Wednesday feels is just not really all that important. And that's something that Vulcan has upgrades to. He's someone who is in fact living in the modern day world. Wednesday, again, he's just not willing to do that. He wants to bring all these old gods together, but I'm starting to wonder if that's really going to work. I mean, Wednesday has this plan, but is it really going to work where he's going to be able to fight against the new gods? Because all the old gods have seemed to turn against him, so I don't really know if this is really going to work out for him, and I'm interested in seeing really what's going to happen there. I mean, I think honestly he might have to unite with the new gods, but we'll have to see the way that really goes down. I get it that he wants the old gods to reign superior, but I just don't know if that's really going to work out for him. I think he wants it to, but I don't really know how that's going to go. Also, let's talk about Shadow, because Shadow's in this position now where he's obsessed with Laura and he can't get her off his mind, and I do like the way they're both kind of departing from this, especially with Salim and Laura. They, by far, I think were my favorite part of this entire episode. I love we got with Shadow and Wednesday. I thought it was still great, but Salim and Laura especially, I really loved their connection here, how similar they really were, how they both are kind of undead and they kind of are getting to start their lives anew again, and they're realizing that this is their chance chance to turn things around. I really am liking it. I really do like the way that Salim is looking at life. Like, he's looking at life in a way where, you know, this isn't forever. He can really turn his life around and pretend like it never really happened. And then the way that Laura is going to try to distance herself from Shadow, I think is also really cool. But, of course, there's also that fear that she could, in fact, die. I mean, Sweeney's telling her that, look, you're not going to last forever, and he's going to try to resurrect her. If she doesn't give him that coin, though, I don't think Sweeney's going to help her at all. But I do think, like I said, we're going to get more into his backstory. We're going to see why that coin is of such great significance to him, and I think there's definitely more to Sweeney than we think, so we'll have to get more into that whole story. But I really do love the bonding between Salim and Laura. I'm looking forward to seeing really where that's going to go, and I like the way they were able to help each other move past what really went down. I thought that was definitely really well done. Overall, guys, I definitely really did enjoy this episode. I'm really liking where the show is going. I like that all of these characters are kind of going in their own direction, especially Laura. I would have thought that Laura would have gotten involved with Shadow, but it seems like that's not the case. Like, she's realizing she needs to move away from him, but I do still feel there's an ounce of humanity still in Laura that needs to be with Shadow. There's still something about that where I feel like this is not over between her and Shadow, especially because we saw a scene in the promo where she's talking to Shadow about him working with the new gods and things like that. So I don't really know how that's going to go. We'll have to see the way that really does play out. I don't really know these last two episodes are going to go, but at the same time, the show has been very unpredictable so far, and I'm very interested in seeing really where it's going to go from here on out. But overall, guys, I definitely really did enjoy this episode. I am going to give American Gods Season 1, Episode 6, A Murder of Gods, a 4.5 out of 5 or an A-. So for guys, maybe this episode of American Gods. Most guys thought this episode overall. Left your thoughts in it. I really did love this episode overall. Also, what a great episode about gun control. They did a great job with having this episode and not making it too heavy-handed. I was happy with the way they did do that. I see so many episodes now trying to do these very controversial topics, and this show really did in a way that felt very natural. Like, it made sense why they went this direction. That, you know, was more about retaining power, and I was happy the way that all went. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for the season premiere of Fear the Walking Dead. I know I've been very on and off with that show, but the finale was very promising, and I heard they're going in a much different direction, so I really hope that does pay off, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.